Good morning, and welcome to the Landmarks Preservation Commission's public meeting and public hearing for February 10th, 2026. We're going to begin by taking attendance, and I'm going to ask our legal counsel, Mark Silberman, to call the roll.
Vice Chair Master,
Here.
Commissioner Chen,
Yeah.
Here. Commissioner Ginsburg,
Here.
Commissioner Goldblum, Commissioner Quimby, Mr. Jefferson. Here. Commissioner Mann.
Here.
Commissioner Wilder.
This meeting is being held in our hearing room at 253 Broadway on the second floor. It is also being held via Zoom and live streamed on YouTube for anyone who would like to participate remotely. We're going to begin with a public meeting agenda for items which have already had a public hearing, and then move to our public hearing agenda for new applications on our designated properties. Now I'd like to turn it over to our Director of Preservation, Corey Harala.
Thank you, Vice Chair Master. We'll start today's Preservation Department agenda with public meeting item number 1, LPC 26-03280, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, Block 2111, Lot 45, 138 to 154 St. Felix Street, aka 11 to 21 Hanson Place in the Brooklyn Academy of Music Historic District. This is a neo-Gothic style church building designed by Halsey, McCormack, and Helmer and built in 1929 to 1930. The application is to alter and demolish portions of the building, remove, replace, and relocate doors and stained glass windows, and construct a tower. This was last presented at the public meeting of January 13th, 2026, and no action was taken at that time. The applicants will present revisions to the proposal in response to the commissioner's comments after we open the proceedings.
Let's open the proceedings. Commissioner Goldblum, would you make a motion to open the proceedings?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Chu, would you second that?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the proceedings are open. The applicant may begin.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. Dan Kaplan, FX Collaborative Architects. I'm joined by Bill Chalkley from my office, and Brigida Capadoca from Ashton Doyle, and Drew Hartley, who is on the Zoom. We have a presentation about a revised proposal for this site and application. So where can I? James, you want to help me out? Okay, that was easy. Yep. Nope. No, it's not. Oh, there it is. So there we, okay. Beautiful. So I'm going to give a brief introduction, talk about revisions to the massing of the building and the proposal. And then ADP is going to talk about the church building restoration and some of the alterations, an update on that. And finally, I'm going to come back and talk about the architectural approach of the enlargement itself. So just to remind folks, we're in the BAM Historic District. The church is at the corner of St. Felix and Hanson Place. It's a wonderful, idiosyncratic, unique church structure that is in need of revitalization and repair. As I stated at last time, our goals here was to enable the adaptive reuse of the church and preserve as much historic fabric as possible to create a unique, distinctive, bespoke intervention unique to the site, and really relate to the BAM Historic District, which we're very familiar with. So there's 3 drivers here. One is to really bring this church building back to life. 2, to create a massing that is sympathetic with the church and also has its own clear sense of itself. And then, of course, relates to the historic district. So thank you for your comments. We took them to heart. We really sorted through them very carefully and put them into three categories. First was a reduction in scale and height, especially. Second, more fabric to be preserved. And third, clarifying the building partee and arrangement, and especially how it related to the church and secondarily to One Hanson Place. So what do? We reduce the height by 30 feet and the bulk by 12%. You'll see that. We'll go through that very carefully. From a preservation point of view, ADP will talk about this, but the new partee, the new scheme preserves the northernmost bay along St. Felix Street. We've reworked the entrances to preserve more of the fabric, and there's a very interesting stained glass program, which you'll hear about. Then finally, in terms of the massing and the architecture, we've set the whole building further away from St. Felix, from the second tier. That has a substantial impact. We've reduced the steps at the mid-block. We no longer have the interlock at the north side. This simplifies the idea of the building. It clarifies the relationship between new and old, and it creates more separation from both One Hanson Place and 130 St. Felix. And we've clarified materiality. So massing. This is the existing elevations, Hanson Place on the left, St. Felix on the right. This was our previous proposal. We've abstracted that just from pure massing. So on Hanson Place, there were basically a composition of two major volumes with a one-story gap, and on St. Felix, there were 6 stepped forms, and then I call it the cascade of several steps that came down and interlocked with the church, and then all that was bracketed by another volume, that volume on on Hanson Place. So what we've done in response to comments is simplify the massing. We have one form which is pushed further back from Hanson Place that is has micro steps or serrations. I'll show you how the effect of that is, but it reads as one volume. And then the 6 volumes are more prominent now. We've eliminated the cascade of massing coming down into the base. That allows for the preservation of the northernmost bay, creates a very clear relationship between the church and the tower above, and then of course reducing the height by each step in its own way. The top step 30 feet. So just the middle 2 volumes stick up above the shoulder by 11 and 13 feet respectively. But one thing that's very clear from this is that the profile of the new building in elevation fits within the profile of One Hanson Place. That's now back to the new colored elevation, which we'll walk you through some details. In plan, left was our original proposal. Just 3 central critical areas. One is the North Bay, which we've removed all of that mass, especially lower down. That has a real good effect on St. Felix Street. We have pushed the whole building back, and so that allows for a 33-foot separation from St. Felix, 30, 27, 30, 33, and 36. So there's this stepping back. And then finally, this is the relationship to or the profile of the plan along Hanson Place. And from the side of this, and you'll see this in the photo montage, the west face of the pier of the nave is now exposed by 20 feet, where before it was more like 15 feet. So here's some 3Ds, aerials, and we'll get, of course, into street views in a moment. This is the left was a previous proposal, and the right is the current proposal, the revisions, the reduced height, the reduced shoulder, the elimination of the shoulders, if you will, or the cascade, and the pulling back. I think this is a really telling slide where before the cascade came down, we've eliminated that. So now along St. Felix, with those substantial setbacks, there is more of the existing streetscape in the lower street wall is maintained and preserved. Also, the separation between 130 and 144 is increased. and thereby allowing more openings to One Hanson Place, and of course, the height is reduced. Another view of similar, just lower down, pushed back from Hanson, reduced in height, and cascade removed, allowing for the preservation of this and adaptive reuse of that corner. This is from our computer model, and then we'll go into photo montages. On the left was a previous proposal, and the right is the new. Similar move, and I'll come back to the architectural rationale for some of these moves after Drew talks, but you basically have, from a pure massing point of view, the setback along Hanson, the reduction in height, and then the elimination of these cascades. So photo montages, this was what you saw last month or month before that. So this was existing on left, the original proposal, and then the revised proposal. Clearly more of the crown is visible, including the arcade of arches that wrap around the base of the upper tower. We think there's a more comfortable relationship also with 130. This is from Barclays looking north, existing on left, previous proposal on right, where we were, part of the comments were, making too much of an attempt to relate to One Hanson. The revised proposal on the right, we've abandoned any attempt to make, alignments, and basically, because of the way the massing works, the building is really visually below the shoulder, including the two pieces that step up from 4th Avenue Atlantic, previous and proposed. I think that this is one of our critical central views of a thesis of our approach, was that by pulling the building back from the corner, allowing the mass of the church building to be coherent, it's still proof positive that that works, and I think it's probably even a little bit stronger, a little lower building. Previous proposal from Fowler Square, left versus right, you can see the less height, more prominence to One Hanson Place, more comfortable relationship with 130. And then finally, and I'll turn over to Drew to talk about the church, and I'll come back. I think this is a very telling view as well. Looking south on Lafayette, the height is now lower, but pushing the building in and exposing the north end of the church, and the stepping and tiering that happened with the existing structure, or that is in the existing structure, maintains more of the scale of St. Felix. So Drew and Brigida, do you want to take this next section, and I'll come back?
Hi, I'm Brigida Capcato. I'm just advancing the slides for Drew.
Good morning, Commissioners. Drew Hartley from Etches & Doyle Partners. We wanted to talk further about the church building itself and the restoration and proposed alterations. All right, so this is the existing elevation of the church as it sits on Hanson Place. We'll get into the modifications, but there's a couple of things here that we wanted to point out first. The base of this building has always had retail storefronts. They've had different stores over time. The Boy Scouts of America occupied some of them at one point. But with retail and storefronts, there's a history of change, and same with this building. Those storefronts have changed over time, and we'll show that to you later. That's something we'll talk about further. Next. So the moves that we talked about previously in broad strokes here are, we're restoring the tracery of the windows that exist on the building. We're removing religious figures and giving those back to the church, and preserving non-religious figures in that stained glass window, and we'll get into that further. We're replacing kind of the second tier down of windows in kind, keeping the leaded glass but making them operable so it can be used for residential, so the adaptive reuse can work. this is the elevation of the new building behind. You can see the alignments that Dan started to talk about with the piers of the new building, really relating directly to the structure below. And we can keep on moving across. So on St. Felix, the big pieces here are that right-hand bay, that northern bay of the church. So we're keeping all of that bay in the current proposal. And something else I just wanted to point out is there's 3 blind arches here that don't have windows in them. We are opening those up and adding new tracery and windows into those blind openings. And then actually, next slide. And I'll come back to tell you more about it, but we have found ways to retain more historic fabric at the base. And the bottom left is probably a meaningful example of that. The oriel window at the corner will be preserved. And we have a few different examples of how the existing doors will be retained as well. Next. So this is that overall composition, Dan's description of how the structure above ties into it, makes a lot of sense, and the rationale is there. Next. Okay, so previously we talked about kind of the massing of this church and how it works in the historic district, how it steps down and does a great job of changing from scales of the tall parts of the historic district to the shorter parts of the historic district. We also talked about materiality of the church, that it has this red brick consistent throughout the church with banding of cast stone, which has a high contrast. But we wanted to come back and tell you a little bit more about all the decorative details of the church and how those start to tell the story of this building, and that our preservationist approach preserves more than just this bulk of the building. So if the pictures on the bottom start to tell that story. So on the far left, we have terracotta detailing. This is above the main entrance on Hanson Place. All of that will be restored in place and be maintained. The second piece is there are inscriptions that occur in several places of the building. We have black diamonds on the photo above, showing there's an inscription above the rose window on Hanson Place. There's an inscription above the entry door on Hanson Place, and then there's 2 locations of inscriptions on St. Felix. Those inscriptions really just talk about the overall goals of this church, of religion in general, but education, philanthropy, and consolation. They're general themes that start to tell the story of this building, not just as a building, but how it functioned in its community. And on top of that, there are other relief plaques. There's an anchor. There are lots of different figures throughout the building. We have some photos of them here, but they talk about faith, justice, hope, charity, fortitude, and humility. So all of these are being retained. And the important piece here is that this is more of a story that's being preserved here. It's the memory trace of this building, how it functioned, how important it was in the community. And these things are really part of that story and will be preserved. Next. All right, the stained glass. So the blue in this diagram is the religious stained glass, which will be given back to the church. They tell about Bible passages, and they're going to go back to the church. The orange, the main figures face away from the street currently. They're on the bottom elevation, and they're 4 secular examples of how this church saw God working through humans. And these 4 examples are the scientist, which is Galileo, the poet John Milton, the humanitarian Florence Nightingale, and the patriot Abraham Lincoln. Those are the figures that we're looking to relocate and reuse as part of the project. Next. So here you can see them consolidated into the large window at Hanson Place, those 3 different panels. And then around the corner on St. Felix, John Milton, the poet, will be used there. We talked about it previously, but that's a 3-story space in the new program. So from the inside, you'll be able to see the entire window. And from the outside, it won't have floor slabs coming into it. It'll be illuminated at night and shown from the street. So, and we'll show you how that goes together. The second part of this is that the rest of the nave windows, we looked closely, and there's trifoils of stained glass that we looked to preserve. And that will go all along St. Felix Street, bringing some of that stained glass into each of those windows. We do need the other clear part of those windows for light and air for residential, but we thought this was a way to bring that story through to the rest of the main windows. Next. This is an example of how that works. So these are different pieces. The panel on the bottom right is Galileo. We're showing the size of it, and it will be relocated to one of the panels on the right-hand side. But there are other kind of important pieces to this story. The upper left figure is a figure of Fort Greene. So it was part of the founding of the church in Fort Greene. And then the bottom three panels on the main window on Hanson Place, they tell the story. It's called Beginnings. Those three panels are called Beginnings, and they talk about the founding of the church. So the story that goes with them is that Mary Powers was the founder of the church, and she came on a boat across the East River in the 1850s, and came to this place in Brooklyn and really saw this as, you know, a grand new city, a place that she wanted to found a church. So there's a lighthouse which led her across the river. There's her in a boat going across the river, and then the third panel is a figure of this church itself. So we have Fort Greene, which is going up top, which is the neighborhood. We have the founding of the church on the bottom, and then we have these secular figures who were chosen by the church as examples to emulate in life, telling a really meaningful story here. Next. So just showing how they come across and how the dimensions of these panels will fit in. The three secular figures are slightly smaller than the window on Hanson Place, so we'll be adding about a 4.5-inch border around them to make them fit into that area. Next. And this is the final view with all three of those panels and all of those stories intact, and then the trifoils on the left in the other windows. This is just going around the corner. Also, so this is on St. Felix, but the other single window, John Milton will go there next. That stained glass is incorporated. And this is new tracery going in that blind opening right now. Next. And again, the final version of what that will be. Okay, so looking at the elevation, it's not just that we're keeping colored glass on Hanson Place, it's that the stories of these figures were important to the church. They are being relocated to this to Hanson Place, so the primary window, but the memory trace of the values of the church are being preserved and tells a meaningful story. Yes, next. Okay, so looking at historic fabric, we took a deeper look at the existing wood doors throughout the church. They happen on Hanson Place and then 2 on St. Felix. Previously, we were not reusing those wooden doors, but we're coming back to you with a revised proposal. So the main entrance, we are going to reincorporate them. They will swing in at the front doors, be restored and be put back in place. Moving to St. Felix, that's the center view. We are restoring those doors and reinstalling them at the more primary entrance on St. Felix. And then the new residential entry to the right. Previously, we had a larger opening that had design cues that related more to the new building above than it did to the church. And we've reconsidered that, and we're using the existing openings for a residential entrance, and then dropping the sill of this window. This is our primary access point for construction, so it's still important that we have a as big a possible opening so that it's feasible to do construction. But we found a way to make it much more appropriate and keeping that northern bay of the church. Next. So These are the existing doors. You can see there's a handrail on the doors. They used to, well, they currently swing open and are open when church was in service. That's the general concept that we will keep going forward. Next. Existing doors did not have a top landing. We're going to be rebuilding those stairs, creating a top landing so it complies with code, and swinging the doors in. Next. So they used to swing out. This is the resolution of what that looks like. The doors are in the open position right now, but they'll be retained, and there will be a landing at the top of the stairs. Here's the section of the stairs with the new handrail, landing at the top, and next. This is with the doors closed. Going to the northern bay, the new residential entry. This is our previous proposal where it was a larger opening. Next. This is the current proposal. So the floor level in this location needs to be lowered to create an ADA entrance to that lobby. But the designs here are working off of the existing historic fabric. We're lowering the sill of that window, and it's engaging the water table similar to the way those two windows engage the water table right now. So this will be a temporary opening for construction just to get into the site. But this is the final resolution of what that window will be, looking into the residential lobby. Section of the historic doors. And more details on this. So the windows and doors here are steel rather than other locations of the building. They are aluminum. These are steel doors, and they take their inspiration and design from the historic condition of these doors. It's a bit of a reinterpretation. It's not an exact copy, but it's custom profiled steel windows and doors to create a meaningful entrance. And we're adding a canvas awning with lighting over that residential entry. So the 3/4 view, we really like how this is coming out. The stepping of the church can be seen here, and the massing of that third bay being retained, I think, is a step in the right direction. Next. So the lot line condition at the north, we wanted to look at this a little bit further. The rose window and tracery is going to be relocated to the interior of the building into the lobby. But the conditions of this wall need some serious restoration. And just thinking about construction feasibility and how this site is accessed, we've come up with a plan for what this wall will become. Next. So breaking into two pieces, there's kind of the 1/3 section of this elevation facing the street, which will primarily be retained and restored. And then the back 2/3 of this elevation will be constructed in the new materials to match the new building above with lot line windows. But all of this is, you can't see it from the street. We've dashed in the profile of 130 St. Felix. So these windows are set back significantly from the street. And they relate to the tower above. So in 3D, you can see it here. So our lot line condition, that rose window is not visible from this view. It's set back behind 130. And the cascading tower coming down and going into those lot line windows, we think is appropriate by preserving the first bay of the church. Okay, storefront on Hanson Place. I alluded to this before, but this shows how those storefronts have changed over time. Next. We have original configurations, we have non-original configurations, and we have non-original configurations with non-original materials. So a lot of kind of variation on this storefront, and storefronts in general have a history of changing needs as the tenants of those spaces change. And then on the far right is the oriel window. So previously we were saying that all of this should be new. We have come back to you with meaningful preservation of those front doors. And also we will be retaining the oriel window around the corner on St. Felix Street. But we thought this was an opportunity to interlock the design of the tower above with the church below. Since this is storefronts are something that have a history of changing, this allows us to take that design language above and bring it through the building. So these aren't two buildings speaking different languages, but they can really start to be one composition. Next. Looking carefully at the details that exist on those storefronts. Next. So the main pieces of this is that there's a door and storefront, there's a signage band above that, and then there's grills which hide mechanical grills for all of these spaces historically. So these will be an aluminum storefront with a painted finish in bronze. So everything will have a uniform finish that matches the windows above in the new building. I'll hand it back to Phil.
Yep. So I'll just close it out here. I just want to talk a little bit about the, oops. Okay, beautiful. So some of the architectural moves, some of the vertical enlargement. So just in big picture, this building above, the tower above, there's 6 volumes that go along St. Felix Street. They're further set back. They boast asymmetrically towards the middle, and then towards the edges they ease back. And then along Hanson Place, there are this micro pleats or serrations that have the vertical pier, 5 of them that rise up. We looked at a number of different alternatives for Hanson, and we really liked this because it was vertical like the church below, a little bit abstract, and also minimal amount of windows and fenestration are visible, so it sort of descales it a little bit, and just creates a simple backdrop. Also, you can, well, we'll show it momentarily. It also shows how much more of one Hanson is revealed. So on the left was the original proposal, on the right is the modified proposal. This is one of those looking up views, if like you're sitting on the street with a wide angle camera, but it really is their sort of unforgiving views. So a great test for us. So what was I think we've spent a lot of time refining this. First of all, as Drew noted, the piers really align with critical moments in the nave of the church. Secondly, we've tightened up the spacing of the piers so it's a little more dense. Third, well, besides setting the whole thing back, we've also simplified the corbelling move. The piers now are just straight, and the infill subtly sets back as you get lower. We'll show you that in a couple other views. So this is a photo montage now view. This was our original proposal. I think this was probably the least resolved of the proposal, and this is the refined, revised proposal. The building is set back approximately 5 more feet, exposing 5 more feet of this pier. There's a simple rhythm of these verticals. They align with moments in the church structure, and they still do turn the corner. Moving around to the corner view, the left was the original proposal, right is the revised. You can see just how much further back we are pushing the Hanson Place facade. You could also see the real effect here of pulling away or removing the cascade and pulling the tower back, allowing the church volume to really be complete and coherent with those renovations that Drew referenced here and the charming oriel at the corner there. You could also see here this is the sort of, there was comments about the from the commissioners about the corbelling, and we still think that it makes sense, but here you can see the piers are straight, and then in two-story increments, the infill steps inward subtly at 4-inch increments. So now the photo montage, left was existing, right was previous proposal, and then the current proposal. There was also a lot of comments about clarifying the relationship between the new and the old, and the relationship of the church. And I think that after thinking about it and sketching and doing some revisions, it really had to do with eliminating this interlock between the two and really creating a much clearer, instead of having this sort of spilling, a clearer relationship with this, with the tower receding around it as you move around. St. Felix view looking north, left is existing, right is original proposal, and you can see now as it loads, the effect of pulling back the building piers and now exposing some of the 130 St. Felix Tower, and really maintaining the relationship of, and one of the great things I think about this church is the way the nave and sort of cascades down to St. Felix, and really preserving that in its entirety. Another looking up view, and you can see the relationship, as Drew pointed out, with the piers and the existing piers, the reduction in height, the elimination of the cascade, and the more generous relationship with 130, and the preservation of the North Bay. Just real quick with materiality, and then I'll stop. Neutral glass on the left. This, and you can see on your right, and the left on the screen, your right for the samples, left on the screen is really the matching of the existing, and I'll show you a photograph in a moment, which is English bond, 5 or 6 colors, sort of weathered iron spot, and we're proposing a slightly reduced, slightly more machined version of that, including a running bond and a stack bond at the spandrels. A cast stone, this facade is designed as brick inset into a cast stone precast panelization. That's how we're able to get the thin lines in it, a warm neutral palette of metals, and of course the restoration palette below with bird safe glass. We went through a brick matching process with the building, and really I think this last slide encapsulates it. At the bottom is really the existing. As I said before, they're more crafted. They're, almost probably 100 years old or close to them. The iron spots are deeper. They're more robust, and it's English bond. And up above, our thought was to create a more contemporary machined version of the same, stripping out some of the extreme contrasts of the dark. So with that, that's our presentation of the revisions. I hope you can tell that we've taken your comments to heart. We believe we've refined, reduced, just generally improved the design. And I really thank you for your comments, and look forward to any questions that you might have about the revised proposal.
Thank you. Commissioner Goldblum, did you have a question?
Yeah. What is the relationship of the plane of the building that is closest to St. Felix to the 130 Hanson? Those buildings tower, that relationship?
I believe the 4th floor and up is set back 40 feet. And we are setting this one back
27,
no, about
30.
33 at the northernmost.
Right.
Is that slide like
I'm looking at
5?
it. 27, 30, 33.
Yeah.
That's your range.
Yeah. So, well, this
So you're a little bit closer to the street than they are.
correct. And it's at the corner, and
Okay, thanks.
yep.
Commissioner Mann?
Could you please
describe the rationale for demolishing the northern wall of the existing church, not the sort of structural integrity rationale, but the geometric rationale for reconstructing it with a flat top as opposed to the peaked top that it has today.
Well, that was fine. What's that? So there's two planes. It's worth noting there are two planes. One is at the property line and one is set back. So where the rose window is, you can see that whole inset along with the peaked roof. And then there are two bracketing volumes. And we are proposing basically along this line to create a a demolition line from here to the west. So that would, see, this is set back and the tower comes like coplanar with that surface.
Yes,
Yeah,
and so
go
like
ahead.
the geometric rationale is more in keeping with how we were treating the cascade previously. So we were thinking of this as a series of stepping up. So it's kind of rectilinear in a way. The tower overbuild is rectilinear in terms of massing.
Nice.
So besides just the peak being 4 feet back from the lot line and just the constructability of that, I think tying the geometry of the steps of the tower into the steps of the church, it's kind of an opportunity to extend that coping back and create a clean line.
So is the other new proposed building right on this lot line? Are these walls hard up against one another?
This is the extent of 130 on the lot line. There's
And
a
it's touching
20-foot
this building.
easement. Yeah, there's
Okay.
a 20-foot easement for the tower of 130. So there'll be a permanent gap between the two.
And above it, where the new lot line windows are indicated, is that also on the lot line, or is that set back
Yeah, those-
in the plane of the rose window as it exists today?
No, these 8 windows are on the lot line.
Thank you.
And then the building sets back above where it's shaded. The 7.5 feet.
Thank you. Given that this is where the rose window was, did you have any thoughts of just keeping the rose window where it is?
It's minimally, we looked at it. There was a few reasons we abandoned the idea of maintaining it there. One is, and you can see from the street perspectives, it's minimally visible from the street, if at all. Two, with the internal planning of the building and intermediate slabs, it would not, it would basically be either opaque, it wouldn't be visible from the inside, given the constraints of layouts. And so it would have, maybe we could do something where it was internally lit with LED and so forth. And our thought was like, well, more people would be able to enjoy it, appreciate it, come in contact with it if it were in a prominent place within the building interior. Like I said, there was a view, I think, the rose window is just peeking up here. This is across the street, there's no trees. I mean, it's not, that's not really visible.
Thank you. Other questions? Commissioner Jefferson?
On page 13, 130 St. Felix Street.
13, you said? Getting there. Yep. So got there and blew by it. Got one more. Yeah,
130 Felix Street is a new building, correct?
correct.
Has the same language, architectural language, section of ground. And it stopped at the shoulder. Is there any reason why your building goes above that?
Yeah, so, one of the, thank you for the question. I think there's 2 points about that. One is, I think it's worth noting with 130 St. Felix is that on the street sides, especially the St. Felix Street, it cascades up, and then there's a long horizontal that goes north, east-west that is on the lot line. In other words, this surface, and we showed that to you last time in photo montages. And I think given the condition of this building that's parallel to St. Felix, and that it's closer to the intersection of, with the wide street of the corner, our thought was to avoid having a wall like or a flat top on this, and really, cascade this way and sculpt the building north to south. And on average, I would say that the building is way lower than the shoulder. There are 2 pieces that come up in the middle that are mid-block, and I think from a massing point of view, I think it's the alignment with the shoulder, and maybe the best place to see that is in the photo montages. Sorry, let me just, yeah, I mean,
If you go
there's,
back, you would see that whether the position of the one
here, yeah. This is the,
element, power becomes dominant.
Mhm.
So it was a little bit more to emphasize that issue. Oh, the 2000, by emphasizing the languages the same, by making them all pretty much the same size, you could still have the higher portion and step that. But the tower becomes more dominant because of the composition surrounded by the same element.
yeah, I hear what you're saying, but this, I think having 2 long surfaces here, I think would be more detracting from one Hanson than having something that was more sculpted on the left and a little bit more controlled on the right. I appreciate what you're saying in terms of their similar vocabulary, but I think we've also taken pains to differentiate them, and that there are the 144 proposal is really a series of vertical volumes that are stacked up against the other, and really 130 is really more of a subtractive cutting away.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions? Commissioner Chen?
Just out of curiosity, you said that the rose window on the northern lot line facade will be relocated on a prominent location. Have you decided on the final location?
Not 100%, but we were considering the main lobby of the building, or depending on the community facility user on the ground floor, it could possibly be there, depending on who the ultimate tenant is. I do think we went, and Drew testified to this, we really put our eggs in the basket of looking at that nave at the end on the Hanson Place side, which you could see from the street, that will be lit up at night where most people pass by it, and reorganize the stained glass there. We couldn't find a place on the facade that so prominent that would work, so we opted for something that would be internal to the building.
And the other, it will be the question about, the expression you just used about the subtraction or the addition, and I guess this is really a subjective decision, design decision. If you can go back to the rendering on page 72 of the Hanson Place, I think, because I think
This looks
Sev-
74,
72,
73.
72, the one that can show the top? Or is it that I miss, hold on. Yeah, okay. I think, being that this is visible, from the left side, across the avenue, have you thought about putting some of this massing toward the back where the Commissioner Jefferson was talking about? Because there is a setback on the Williamsburg Tower, and then throwing that massing toward the northern side.
Are you talking
At the top. At the
at,
top.
at
of
the top,
Yeah.
filling in the top?
Yeah. You see where the articulation on the top? Yeah.
Over here.
Yeah, where you used to do it, whether it makes sense to, because if you look at the Felix side, you chose to sort of do the step up on this side and then a cascading on the back.
Right.
The question is, obviously, if you throw it more to the back, it becomes much more symmetrical along Felix.
Maybe I'm not. Let me see if I can find another view. You think I'm not? Yeah, yeah. 5.
Or even the elevation along St. Felix will give you a.
What's that? 17. Oh,
Yeah.
so are you referring to,
If you go back to the previous drawing that you just passed with the, yeah, right here.
so is your question filling in here?
No, it's going to the building on the right. That massing, does it
Right.
make sense to put it on the right, to the
Hey,
northern side?
this and go higher here?
Yeah.
So, okay, and you're saying, okay, reverse it where?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
obviously, it's a subjective design.
Yeah,
decision, but
so-
given the visibility from the,
Uh-huh, I think that, good question. So, there was, one of the commissioner comments last time was about creating more separation between 130 and 144 to open up the valley, if you will, between these two buildings, exposing more of the east face of one Hanson. And it also seems to me that's the mid-block. And our idea was like, well, step down to the mid-block. There's a tiering that goes down here and then it picks up here. And, it's sort of a cascade to the middle of the block and sort of more density, more height, more, closer to Hanson Place.
Commissioners, any other questions? Commissioner Chu?
Trying to understand better Wellington's question. Can you go to slide 16? That's the one I keep looking at because it just helps me understand the heights. Okay, and can you go to the next slide?
Yeah.
Too? Yeah, okay, so I guess this is the one that I was looking at last time. This clearly has you're working with is it,
130.
130 Felix, right? The neighboring lot
Yeah.
building, where it feels like they're working in conjunction to open up the space. And you
Yeah.
see that in the perspective views when you're looking from my side, looking
Correct.
at street level. My question was back then was, had you ever tried a version where you flip this? And I think that's what Wellington is saying, where your relationship of the new build to the historic below and to the one Hanson has that reveal. against it as opposed to it revealing against the other new building? That, I think that was a simple question. And-
Yeah.
And if you go back one slide now, you can see that perspective that was being, yes, discussed.
One more.
I'm sure you guys tried a lot of different
Yeah.
massing options. It's just, I guess for me, the question is, if I look at this view, what is a designer, what is your concept of how the white mass relates to its neighboring masses?
Yeah.
What is the design thought? You talked about individuality, but there's obviously context and
Right.
mass to deal with around you.
Mhm.
Yep.
So, yeah, our feeling was that we wanted to, one, create, the building we feel should have its own profile and not be flat cut, right? So that was number one. Then the second question is like, where do you locate, where's the hierarchy? Where's the high point? And I guess there's three locations. You could put it at Hanson, you could put it middle, or you can put it east. We felt, I mean, north, near 130. We felt that in respect to the location on the block, that putting it to the north would be less comfortable vis-a-vis 130, and also less mostly, as you referenced before, cut off too much of the view into what we call the valley, into One Hanson. Then the other thing would be putting it on the avenue and or the wide street, or there's
Street wall.
the street
which
wall,
was-
right?
yeah.
So there zoning wise, there is a required setback and so forth, but so we can't just go do a point tower there. We
Huh.
also felt that it would I think it's just starting to more competing with One Hanson Place. And then what we thought was nice about the center is that it worked with the natural bowing of the way the plan wanted to work, where as you get to the corners of the structure, you're opening up diagonal sight lines. And two, I think this elevation, I know people don't see these things in elevation, but I thought this was telling in that where we are packing the mass is really close to the centroid of One Hanson Place's tower, so that we're really trying to sculpt floor area here so that, it has the least impact on the neighbors, but B, also creates its own sense of identity. So that was our thought process.
Okay, and one other comment. So if I look at the elevation on the left.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly that One Hanson has a datum at that lower mass
Mhm.
podium, right? That's a clear massing datum that
Here,
you
yeah.
could see all around,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
that's a clear, and you do register it.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah, it's-
actually right there?
Yeah, it's set back like 16, 18 feet at this point. Yeah.
Okay. But your building abuts the side facade of One Hanson.
Correct.
It butts it. It doesn't create any kind of
Gap.
or reveal to
Correct.
make its independence. It
Yeah.
almost feels like
Right.
it's coming out of it.
So we looked at creating a reveal,
reveal,
bowing it back in, and I guess the looking up views were the most telling. Yeah, well, this is good too. This is we felt there was already a substantial setback here, 18 feet. And there is, I guess there's a choice. We could have, bow here and then bow back in. We looked at it and it just created such a strong element above the nave that it detracted from the sort of turning of the corner. And that was the balancing act there's probably several ways to skin this cat, but that's
I follow.
how we landed.
Your strategy.
Yeah,
right.
that's how we landed.
The
Yeah.
reason I raised the
Yeah.
question is because when you look at the elevation of Hanson Street,
Mhm.
the church itself has a natural setback there. And
Yeah.
it seems like it would have been a good tie into the building below as well as the building to the side. Okay, thank you.
But one last thing, I just want to point out that we did, you could see these sort of piers, and, that really works with the steps as well. So yes, the church does have a recess there, but it also has a sort of rhythm, and by setting the building back, 18 feet, we felt, well, do we need to create a reveal beyond that? It seemed like it was calling more attention towards that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank Commissioner Chu for helping to clarify the question. I guess the other way to phrase it is this: from the perspective from Flatbush Avenue and Atlantic Avenue, does that modification help in any way from the view of the massing from around the corner?
We have, here. So I think you can see the shadow line and the separation, but I think this is the real one you're asking about, is the next one. Yeah.
Or this one?
Yeah.
Hmm.
So we could probably just zoom in a minute, but really, I think what it does by creating such a deep setback here is it allows this volume to be seen in the round.
I'm referring to the top.
Oh, okay. So, yeah. I mean, it's I think our intention there was to create something that was, simpler, neutral, it's not the tallest building in the district. It's, it's just and we're set back enough that, we don't have a street wall setback. So it just seemed to us to just do something, pretty simple. And it also gave the advantage where it is, that side of the building is more visible, to create the simple portable expression, looking from east to west.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. So let's go ahead, and I think I'm going to turn it over to Stephen Thompson, because we had several letters and submitted written testimony that I think he's going to review. This was shared in advance of today's meeting with the commissioners.
Noting for the record that LPC received the following written comments after the initial January 13th public meeting that were shared with the commissioners. HDC submitted written comments recommending denial, citing concerns with height, bulk, and design. The Residential Board of 1 Hanson Place recommends denial, and LPC received written comments from 24 individuals recommending denial.
Just for the people listening, we did receive some we did receive some emails complaining that people couldn't speak at today's meeting or the last meeting. And just so everyone's clear, the commission has for a long time had its policy that at public hearings, obviously people can speak as well as submit written testimony. At public meetings, unless the design is something that's completely radical, in which time we will hold a new public hearing. But if it comes back with responses to commissioners' comments, it's a public meeting. No oral testimony is permitted, but we do allow and encourage people who have views to submit written testimony, which, as Vice Chair Master said, is put in the box and is available to you. So just so the listening public understands that.
Thank you. So let's go ahead and start this discussion. Commissioner Mahan, would you like to start this discussion?
That is ski jumper.
Thank you, Vice Chair Master. I will start this discussion with pleasure. There is a lot to consider and a lot to discuss, so I beg everyone's forgiveness if I go long in advance, but I thank the applicant to start with for their careful presentation, very thorough and careful responses to many questions here today. A few very high-level thoughts. This is an incredibly complex project with lots of different, forces to consider. And, it's, while we may not make our decisions, on these sort of larger issues, this is really attempting to navigate through this microcosm of this project, issues of history, of development, how we all collectively picture, our own city in our mind's eye, and really the meaning of preservation ultimately. And although it's not always the right strategy, I think that this project is asking us to question how can we, in a sense, activate the forces of preservation through development, through change and the management of change. So, I do see, this was a statement made at the last public hearing, that preservation is a creative act. And in this case, I think adaptive reuse can, even when it involves significant alteration, in the right circumstances, specific to the right project, be a valid means of preservation. So the first hurdle to get over is the appropriateness of the scale and massing here. So perhaps we can consider that through a few different lenses: the district, the neighboring building, One Hanson Place, and then 144 St. Felix itself. So restating some thoughts that I had perhaps at the original public hearing, if you'll forgive me. This historic district and this block in particular in this historic district is unique because it features significant variety of use, of height, of style, and most notably, a variety of scale. The district, its block, is marked by a corner marker, One Hanson Place, obviously, the most iconic sort of landmark as part of this district, and clearly the tallest, point of reference. I do think it's notable that the building is a part of a historic district. It's not an individual landmark. Let's switch now to One Hanson Place. I was quite persuaded from the public hearing by the argument that One Hanson Place is a corner lot line building. To me, that is fundamental to the appropriateness of this appropriateness or a potential appropriateness of this application. Eastern facade of One Hanson Place, as well as the northern facade, are lot line facades. I think they clearly were envisioned that way. They have less articulation. The configuration of decoration, windows, etc., is distinct, very distinct from the other two facades. In some of the public testimony, there's been comparisons made to some of the other most notable landmarks in New York City, the Empire State Building, the Chrysler Building. This is different than those. Those have full block exposures. So this is completely distinct in that manner. This is a lot line building and imagined to be so, and that is one of the fundamental aspects of the DNA of New York City. So I think that argues for the appropriateness of some height adjacent to One Hanson Place. Switching to the building, 144 St. Felix itself. Okay, so let's say the historic district can accept scale. Let's say One Hanson Place can accept scale next to us falling project. And 144 St. Felix Street accept scale. We spend a lot of time in these meetings looking at rooftop additions and attempting to minimize their visibility. I think that this, is a unique condition. This is a church building. There have been some discussions here at the commission previously about the need to think more creatively about the potential adaptive reuse and the potential of churches to accept more significant alteration because of declining usage and declining investment in those buildings. And that certainly is the case in this building. It is in very, very poor shape, and this is a means to activate this building in this historic district. It is a corner, which I think also argues for the ability to accept height. And there are other examples of visible rooftop additions. Terminal Warehouse is one such one, not a tower, of course, but that building is a long horizontal building, but quite visible. And so I think, the argument that any rooftop addition must be, diminishingly visible, perhaps may not apply in this condition. So I think that this is a building type, and this building type in this particular location and context can handle more significant intervention. As to the tower design, I think significant improvement has been made in its massing, its scale, as well as its articulation. Perhaps the biggest question is the overall height. Its peak is close to the main shoulder of One Hanson Place at 285 feet. I suspect, there could be questions from other commissioners about should that be reduced to, not peak above 285 feet. Curious to hear other people's thoughts. I'm personally okay with how it is designed currently, just peaking above that 285-foot datum. This elevation drawing is a vantage that is not experienced in reality. Of course, it is a architect's projection. I thought that the street views were compelling. The long views, it's even aligned or lower than the shoulder. In other views, of course, it is higher because we're viewing it in the round in perspective. I think stepping the tower back from the church on all sides clearly maintains an understanding of the original volume of the church. So I think that is successful. I would personally ask that the applicant explore, or I would ask, that the peak at the northern facade be maintained. If the strategy, as distinct from the last time we saw this, is now to maintain the integrity of the volume of the church, we ought to go all in on that concept and maintain that peak. Now that the so-called cascade has been eliminated, there's a clear stance there. I think the bowing, in plan and elevation, as sort of translated through these vertical striations, is a pretty successful way of harmonizing the building with the church below while keeping it distinct. And then finally, on the preservation, I think a lot of significant improvement has been made, particularly with the retention of the doors. I thought that was pretty persuasive. Sure. I think there's a couple details that the applicant could continue to work on, with staff in terms of the stained glass windows, retaining additional, non-religious border areas, to the greatest extent possible. So those are my comments from the large scale to the detailed. Thanks for your patience.
Thank you. Commissioner Ginsburg?
Well, given that very thorough description, no, I was going to say I could be briefer. I first want to thank the applicants because they did address all the comments we had. And in general, I think this is appropriate. And I think the thing that Commissioner Mahan mentioned, but I want to sort of emphasize the changes at the north end with getting rid of the cascade, exposing more of the existing building and opening up with the other new building to create more light air into the space between the two buildings is important and commended. I'm all right with the height. I could, again, as Commissioner Mahan said, I'll be curious what the other commissioners say, but I can find this appropriate.
Thank you. Commissioner Wilder?
Good morning. I think definitely I can see and appreciate the new proposed design and taking a lot of the comments that we previously had and making those adjustments. I think it does enhance the project, especially the area near the main entrance, I believe. Just adding to Commissioner Ginsburg's thoughts about that area. I think I agree generally with most of Commissioner Mahan's comments. I think the preservation work done at the existing church is very helpful and makes this a stronger project. I think which is what we've kind of always said. I agree with, I think there should be more effort or attention paid to the non-religious stained glass windows if we can keep more of those. I find the canopy as a small thing, but I feel it detracts from the church and also a higher block, in my opinion. I can also appreciate the setbacks from the church with the bow. I think it really allowed the church to kind of stand out a little more. In terms of the overall height, especially in relation to the shoulder of Hanson Eye, I think I'm on the fence. It feels awkward, but again, obviously it won't be visible from the street, and I know it's mechanical, that's kind of peeking over, but something does feel awkward when you're looking at it compared to the adjacent building. So I don't know, maybe there could be some work that happens there. And then, yeah, I think overall those are my thoughts. I also agree that the area at the north side, the peak should probably be retained if possible. But overall, I can find most of it is getting close to being appropriate.
Thank you. And Commissioner Kumbay?
First of all, I appreciate all the rigor that was used to try to address all of the comments made by the commission. First of all, I'd like to say that I truly enjoyed the amount of attention that was placed on the preservation of the existing church, from the comments that were made, and I believe a move in the right direction. I guess there are two things that are happening for me in my mind. So it's the preservation of the church and this creation of this new tower and how they integrate together. From the many views that we've seen, some views just for myself seem to be more successful than others. Looking at from the northeast, I believe, looking into the gap into the building, I think it's a more successful view. I also believe that looking at St. Felix and seeing how the rigor of the new tower working and integrating with the existing church works very well by using the more or less the datum lines created by the bays of the church. Where I have more issue is on Hanson Place. The church itself, being a church, they're very symmetrical and they are cross-like in design. And having the tower kind of turn the corner right there, I think there's kind of a misalignment when both of them join together. I'm not saying that the facade of Hanson Place needs to be symmetrical, but some more play in the symmetrical asymmetrical, thank you, could be worked on a little more. And this might happen at the conjunction of at the lot line. So I think it's just some little tweaking could be done to actually make it read a little better. That being the case, that might not cause for the need for the building to be lowered anymore. So I think that investigation may be helpful in making something that's more cohesive.
So you're saying that you're okay with the overall height as it is?
It could be acceptable. That's what I'm saying. But a floor or two lower, under the shoulder of the existing one Hanson Place, it's possible. But it really depends on other moves that are made.
Commissioner Chu?
Thank you. Interesting discussion. I'm going to echo my fellow commissioners. I do think the applicant has definitely made an effort to respond to our comments. I think a lot has been said. I'm going to go through it based on sort of my issues, I guess. In terms of the location and sensitivity and appropriateness of the mass, I think Commissioner Mahan gave a good explanation of this district and the area. This location and site is right on the edge of a larger scale massing and residential, which is on St. Felix, right on the facade face. My feeling, and I also do agree with Mahan's comment that one Hanson's significance really is as a corner tower lot line building itself. And when we look at the whole district, when I look at the proposal, I keep looking that as the reference and the iconic focal point as you look at this area from all distances and how the proposal affects that. So I do think that the desire to have some individuality and expression is appropriate. In terms of the height, I tend to feel that when I look at this from many different angles, I still feel that there needs to be a stronger reference to that datum of the one Hanson Place. And I think that, I don't know, let's see if the height is, I guess it's the major around the 225-foot mark. So that being said, I don't think that the proposal needs to have a flat top there, but I do think that that needs to be a stronger reference to context from big picture perspective. And then I think that then sets 130 Felix, St. Felix, and this project to have a certain respect and subordinates to the historic landmark on the corner. So that's just a general massing feeling about this proposal. The other thing we always look at is the amount of loss to structure and historic material of the historic buildings. and the church is specifically what we're looking at here. I'm in agreement when I look at the east elevation on St. Felix that the north side, the rose window, and a piece of the roof really feel like they're needed to retain the wholeness of the church. As when I look at that elevation, I think with the revisions that have been done, more and more it feels like, you know, the church really is the podium, and that the church is the base, and the scale reference to the neighborhood, and the experience at the sidewalk level. And I do think that the completeness of that building is crucial to this integration. Let's see, the other things we look at are reversibility. That's not really appropriate in this discussion very much. So that I'm going to put that aside. Rhythm and proportion. I can see that the applicant has tried to lock in the bays of the mass above to work with the bays of the church below, and I can see some relevance there. I also see that there's a desire to have a little bit of texture and stepping, which reduces a sense of overall bulk, and I don't have any issue with that either. I think that the comment I have, and still feel this way, is that the way that the proposal meets the church below is emulating what might be more of seeing a building beyond or behind the building, and that is an experience we see in an urban context often. However, that's not really the case. It is, in fact, right behind the facade. And I think that that makes me at least feel uncomfortable. Typically, when we engage with historic structure, and this is a whole church and its mass being we're looking to retain, and I do compliment the applicant on doing that, trying to keep that church as intact as possible. I do think that there is architecturally needs to be something that helps that transition. Because the roof is removed along St. Felix, it's hard for me to read any kinds of transition, and I feel like it is a little abrupt to just come growing right out of the building. So I feel like the applicant could make some moves. You know, we've seen a lot of buildings that have made moves where they come up and over existing buildings. I'm not going to try to design it, but I almost feel like even having a cantilevered floor with a setback would help gesture some type, you know, as we talked about, some type of gasket, some type of transition there, I think architecturally would go a long way. And lastly, I do think that there needs to be some attention paid to how the tower, well, I guess that's the other thing, is it's not, what we're talking about now is not really a tower. And I think that goes along the discussion of what it wants to be perceived of in terms of bulk. I think the tower is 1 Hanson Street, and that's the aspect that I'm trying to feel like visually I'd like to retain as the tower. And how this building meets that side lot facade, I think, you know, could use a little bit of refinement and detail there. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Jefferson?
To me, the importance of this project is the distant view, dominance of the tower. I think they have accomplished that. Made the new building in scale, in such a scale, tower is dominant. I think to make it even more dominant, the datum line should be kept. They kept the datum line on 130, and they should keep the datum line on the building, and it can step up, but just lower it, and could have the crown, and would work perfectly well. They did something really beautiful, I thought, by opening the corner, the diagonal corner, for the views out. I think that works really well with the 135, 135? Yeah, 130 Felix Street. I think that works. I think from the long view, that's what I think it should do, is to make the tower dominant from every view. The issue of tower coming out of a church, see that in Manhattan, you see it all over. It's very odd, I think. Symbolically, and it's odd. But then architecturally, how do you solve that? I think a gasket, as fellow commissioner said, some kind of break. It's not a base really, because you can something coming out of it. Nice kind of transition thing coming out. But what they did was to do some aid with the rhythm and section and plan. They did an incredible job in using the language that they came up with to make this thing work with the church. The other critique I have is the idea of the, stained glass window. You can see replacing them with, I don't know what the story is. Church and now so alter and demolish portion of the building, yes. Remove, replace, and relocate doors and stained glass windows, yes. And with staff, they can work that out. Structure tower, yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Goldblum?
Thanks. Great conversation, really in-depth analysis of an important project. I find myself agreeing with various things that others have said, but disagreeing on some other areas. I start this in the same way that Frank did, by kind of trying to think about it in how do we view this in the context of what we do all the time, every day. And the way I would start that is I would look at the block, not as the block as the city planning department understands it, but as, from an urbanistic perspective of the street, St. Felix Street. St. Felix Street is, it's a district, as Frank noted correctly. It's a district that has a particular, a portion of the district that has a particular character. And I think our job is to try our best to preserve that character while facilitating change. I would describe St. Felix as a two-sided block. It has the east side is very uniform townhouses, with the exception of the building on the corner of Lafayette. It's a straight shot. The west side of St. Felix is institutional for the most part. It's got a 6.5-story BAM on it. It's got the church, which is about 6 stories, and it has a few infill buildings in the middle. And I think that the success of the scheme is will be, for me, I would judge it based on how it preserves that experience. The way it seeks to preserve the experience is to set the building back and to argue, basically, as others have said, that you're really viewing this in the context of the Hanson Place building, which looms over, and the buildings along Flatbush are definitely bigger. So this is another aspect of this particular block. It's a block that is fronting on, that backs up to a much higher density condition. With One Hanson as the crowning glory of that height. And I look at this building in comparison to 130 St. Felix, the proposal that you can see on the right side, and I find myself asking myself, why does that one work and this one doesn't for me? And I think that the reason that one works is because it just feels like it's doing what it says it wants to do, which is that the part that crosses over onto St. Felix from Flatbush, that part doesn't feel like it belongs to St. Felix. It's set back enough, it's flat enough, it's subservient enough to the volume of St. Felix that from an urbanistic perspective, when you're walking down St. Felix, I think that when that building is built, you'll see that mid-rise portion, which is the biggest piece of that building. I think you'll feel that it does belong to the Flatbush Avenue side, and that the whole quality of St. Felix as a block is maintained. I don't get that feeling from this building, and I think about why. I think, first of all, closer. Right? It's closer than, I mean, it's closer than 130. I don't think it should be. And one of the things that we do all the time is, we react to what's given to us. Someone comes in, they say, well, I'm going to build that. And we say, all right, well, make it there. We kind of carve at the edges. I think that it's important, at least for me, I try to remember that there's no magic number that says, this is allowed, but that's not, This is a building that's this big. We can allow for whatever we want here, but I think we shouldn't take it for granted that just because someone comes in with that big, that we have to say, yeah. I think that the volume and the context and the historic preservation of the district should be what guides me. And I think that for me, that would mean that any building that goes here should be no closer to St. Felix than 130 is in its mid-rise section. And I agree with Stephen that I think the shoulder at 225 of Hanson, Hanson, is another significant datum. I mean, if you think about how towers in the city often work, you often have a base that's full, that was usually dictated by zoning, a cornice line that's full, and then stuff happens on top. And here, I think that datum is the 225-foot datum. So I think that even if there are maybe portions that protrude above that a little bit, I think the 225 datum has to be a lot harder. I also agree with Stephen very strongly on the approach as being perhaps a flawed approach in terms of how it smacks down on the building itself. I think that the attempt to a certain extent is to say, I'm part of the background. I'm part of that backyard, rear facing, I'm part of the Flatbush Avenue side that happens to just be a little bit closer than the rest of them. And I think that's why the building tends to kind of hit hard onto the top of the church, especially on Hanson Place. And I think the idea of some kind of architectural device that marry the two together. And I think of the Hearst building. I mean, the Hearst building works in some way because, that the diagrid stops before it hits the top of the Hearst building. And there's a kind of a sense that there's a transition that there's an architectural transition from the Hearst to the diagrid. There's a mediation that goes on there. I think that's an important architectural change. So no closer than 130. No main datum should be the 225. I agree with everybody that the gable on the north end of the church should be retained volumetrically. So it shouldn't just be like a paste on, but there should be some setback or recognition of it. I have to praise the team heartily on the preservation scheme. I think the preservation scheme is great. I think the detail is fantastic. The retention and repositioning of stained glass is important. And as others have said, we're operating these weeks in a period when a lot of churches are getting looked at from a lot of different points of view. And it's important that this is a success, I think. I think it's important that we kind of, as a commission, state our views as that, churches can be added to significantly, but it has to be done in a way that's contextual and that's sensitive to the church and to the
Thank you. Commissioner Chen?
Very interesting conversations and very thoughtful by all comments as well as the testimonies. I think that I agree with Commissioner Goldblum in the sense that let's start with the base, which is that the church. I think the preservation efforts on behalf of the applicant is excellent. I think I much improved over last time. And I also agree with the rest of the commissioner that the other reference iconic building and the reference standard for the whole district is obviously One Hanson Place. And so you are having a iconic One Hanson Place that is bookending on St. Felix. And so in between, I think where the applicant is still struggling is the distribution of the mass and the scale in context from multiple angles and from multiple. And I think Commissioner Chu, Commissioner Goldblum, and Frank also suggested some. So I think it's not so much to me is, we have this fear about height and we hear this thing about density, where in fact it is about the right proportion of the right context, right? One, as a design student, the most urban successful model that you study as a kid is Rockefeller Center. Not that I'm saying that this should be a Rockefeller Center, but many of the elements here remind me of especially 131. That's almost like, across the street on 6th Avenue or Avenue of the Americas. That pattern is what is across there. But, I love the rooftop gardens of Rockefeller Center. I love the English Channel. I love all of those, the art, the mural, and the gorgeous space. You walk into Rockefeller, it's a must-visit place. And I think it really is about in context and the symmetry and the proportion and the way you want to distribute this massing and this context. So I think this is where the applicant needs to work on. And I do not pretend to know what is the right balance. And I think the key is the balance. You have a very important church, gorgeous, one of the best I've seen. I love this structure, and you're trying to preserve as much as possible, and I commend you for that. I think the datum reference that the commissioners talked about on One Hanson Place is the key, which is to say, from which view are you looking at, and how you relocate the massing. I think this is where it needs to work on.
Yeah, I'd like to go ahead and say some things as well. I think that Commissioner Mahan gave us a great start to this discussion. And it's such an important discussion that we're having because we do have so many churches in the city that are trying to do adaptive reuse, which is so incredibly important. And I think that when we look at something like building a residential, incorporating residential into a church in this manner, we do have to be very cognizant of the surroundings. And in this situation, it is not an individual landmark. It is in the historic district. And as Commissioner Goldblum has stated, part of this historic district is residential, fairly uniform. And yet where it sits, you do have the individual landmark, which is quite tall and prominent. And on this block, we have, different types of volume and different types of height, which for me justifies a large residential construction on this church. The other thing that I wanted to note is that I know that in the initial presentation, they had said that when they first built this church building, that there were some considerations of a residential tower when it was first built. And I think that's also important to note. This church also, when it was built, it wasn't just a church. It was also used as a community facility, and that there was also a retail component involved. So I think they're bringing back the retail component, and it makes sense that we would have a residential building on this church. That said, so I can support the building. I think that the applicant has done a wonderful job, especially on the northern end, of retaining more of the volume of the church so that I think, interaction on the streetscape is more with the church, and that what you're gonna see. So I think they've been very responsive in terms of our comments, reducing the height, reducing the volume, and responding to retaining a lot more of the historical features. So that said, I think that we're gonna have to do a little bit more work. But the good news is that I think you've gotten a lot of positive feedback from a lot of the commissioners. and that there were a couple things that, that folks seemed to mention. One of them is using, I guess, the shoulder of One Hanson Place as a datum line. And, that's something that some commissioners, many commissioners felt very strongly about. The other comment that came up quite a bit was the northern rear wall, whether it was rebuilt or not, holding on to the peak. Some commissioners talked about the transition between the tower and the church and maybe architectural ways of resolving that. A lot of commissioners wanted us to retain as much stained glass as possible, which you have done, but, we should continue to do. Corey, do we have any?
I think it's a good summary of the feedback, and the staff will continue to work with the applicants to digest that and work with them, and want to come back with further revisions, then we'll work with them to do that and bring them back as soon as they're ready for another public meeting.
Okay, thank you. Let's move to the next item.
Right, next item is public meeting item number 2, LPC 25-10213, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 1493, Lot 65, 10 East 82nd Street in the Metropolitan Museum Historic District. This is a row house built in 1888 to 1889 and altered in the neo-federal style by Bradley Delahanty in 1924. The application is to alter the front facade, construct rooftop and rear yard additions, and excavate beneath the cellar and rear yard. This was last presented at the public hearing of July 22nd, 2025, and no action was taken at that time. The applicants will present revisions to the proposal after we open the proceedings.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and open the proceedings. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you make a motion to open the proceedings? And Commissioner Mahan, would you second that?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the proceedings are open. The applicant may begin.
Good morning, and thank you for having us back to present our revisions for 10 East 82nd Street. My name is Bill Sook of Sook Design Studio, and I'm joined by John Gordon from my office and Valerie Campbell from Kramer Levin. Before we start discussing our changes, I wanted to reiterate that 10 East 82nd Street has had an unfortunate history of being heavily altered, resulting in a mashup of different styles and being stripped of its original fabric, as you can see on the left-hand side. Quoting an excerpt from the designation report where it mentioned it is often difficult to recognize the original features of Kilpatrick's Queen Anne design. The facades of 10 and 12 have been completely altered, while 14 was replaced by a completely new building. We appreciated the feedback from the public hearing from several months ago and have gone through many iterations with staff to arrive at our presentation today. So I want to point to the image on the right. So the middle, obviously left one is existing, middle one is what we proposed to you at the public hearing. And on the right is the revised proposal, which has gone through a lot of changes. The comment on the front door was that it was too wide, and so we reduced the width of the door and the side doors. There was a comment on the chimney being too visible, so we angled it back, and now it's no longer visible from the street. There were comments on the proposed window opening enlargement. If you look at the revised windows, they look slimmer. We eliminated the heavier trimming around the windows, which allowed for a better proportion of wall-to-window opening. We changed the windows from casement to double hung with a 6/1 muntin pattern. The headers and sills were revised to reflect neo-federal detailing. At the end of the day, though, we did not actually reduce the window openings from before, but we feel like the current proposal results in a slimmed down appearance of the windows. Please keep in mind that these are north-facing windows and we wanted to offer our client better light, and that the much improved thermal windows have slightly thicker frames than the old windows. So the actual glass area is going to be about the same as the original windows. There was also discussion about the possibility of preserving the brick. In coordination with staff and our conservationist, Jablonski Building Conservation, we conducted further testing of the brick and the coating that was applied. Their conclusion was that removing the coating can only be done mechanically, which would likely cause damage to the brick substrate. Overall, I'd like to say that the most important feedback was to fine-tune the detailing and ornamentation to be more consistent with the neo-federal style. In doing so, we simplified the ironwork, we simplified the banding details, and as mentioned previously, we simplified the window detailing, and we are also proposing a cornice design that was suggested by staff to reflect more neo-federal detailing. So just flipping through. Here's the original row, current condition. This slide you've seen before, but it shows the history of the alterations taking place throughout the history of this building. So pretty much every surface of the elevation has been touched or altered. And right now, the current state is that there was a thorough seal slathered all over the front facade, and the brick is not in good shape, as evidenced by the report from the conservationist. Here's some precedents in the district centered around more neo-federal detailing, as well as the limestone recladding that we are proposing. And these are the elevations, again, existing, previously proposed, and today's version. So I'm going to let John talk a little bit more about the existing conditions of the brick.
We presented these previously, and we're just outlining again that we investigated the brickwork, and there's spalling because water gets trapped in the brickwork. You can see here in this location, cracks along the facade and various locations all the way up to the cornice and parapet. And then this is after we had some of the actual paint on the surface stripped, and then we found this ThoroSeal coating. It's a ThoroSeal type coating underneath, which Bill mentioned is only removable by mechanical means. And historically, people had used these things to water seal brick in the past, and it's so aggressive that it's nearly impossible to remove without damaging the brick. And we're just showing the sight lines of the existing versus the proposed. Showing the main thing here is the chimneys are getting slanted back, so they're out of the view. And then presentation of materials, we have at the bottom, we've added the sample of the limestone we're proposing for the front facade, and just a sample detail of how it would be attached to the brick of the facade.
Here are the 3D views from the revised front facade and showing the sloped chimney, which is no longer visible from the street. In conclusion, the beauty of the Upper East Side has been in the variety of styles throughout the district. And even within those different styles, there has been a history of slight variations and liberties that were applied to final versions, usually to a high degree of success. However, In our case, the previous owners took those variations and liberties to the extreme by heavily altering the appearance and causing irreversible damage along the way. It has been many months since we were here at the initial hearing, but in those months, we took all of your comments and worked very closely with staff to produce a revised design that we think will be an appropriate and welcome addition to the block. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions? Commissioner Ginsburg?
So I'm going to apologize. I was not here at the first presentation, but it looks like you're doing a full height rear yard addition from the section on, what is it, page 9, I think it is? Yes. Is that the case, and was that discussed previously?
What?
Good morning, Commissioners. Valerie Campbell from HSF Kramer. There was an extensive discussion of the full height addition at the prior meeting, I think in July. And because of the context and the alterations, the commissioners at that time, basically there was a consensus reached that in this case, the extension was appropriate.
Thank you.
The main context, if I may, is the building to the right of our building from the rear facade. That was a full height addition and comes out even further than ours.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions? Okay. Commissioner Goldblum?
It will be slightly proud. Let me just show you, sorry. You will see on the right-hand edge of our proposed limestone, we are stepping it back like a thin reveal line. It's a similar detail from actually a building across the street that was our inspiration.
Thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner Chu?
And for me, this is also because I don't recall seeing this. The facade brick damage requires a rebuild of the front facade. Is that what the condition
That's our
is?
conclusion,
Okay.
yes.
And because of that, you proposed new window opening sizes from the historic. And was that discussed the last time?
Yes.
Okay, and there was positive reading on that of changing the window size? Or was that a part of the discussion?
It was part of the discussion, something that we were asked to come back with, and that's why we revised
You
the design.
did a slight revision?
Yes, sir.
And it was more about, for you, proportion than the size itself?
Proportion, and then the detailing and ornamentation around the window
Around the
openings
trim.
themselves. I think, I feel like we've done a lot to try and minimize that and just try and simplify all the details around it. So I think the windows are really a kind of, though slightly larger, they're kind of a de minimis differentiation from the original sizes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Let's go to Stephen Thompson to see if we have some written submitted testimony.
LPC received one piece of written comments after the initial July 22nd hearing that were shared with the commissioners from Historic District Council's recommendation to retain the size of the existing front facade masonry openings and that the window designs better reflect the building's architectural character.
Thank you. So let's go ahead and start this discussion. Commissioner Goldblum, would you like to start this discussion?
Sure. Okay. Back facade. I don't believe that I was part of that consensus, so I think I'll remain not part of that consensus, that I think that the reason for maintaining the top floor in its current position has only a little bit to do with context, but it has, for me, as much to do with the retention of the volume of the historic building as an individual building, as it does to creating a contextually aligned row. So here, the fact that the building next door happens to be rather deeply extended doesn't, for me, address the volume of the historic building, which is, in this case, vanished. So I would argue for the retention of the top floor. In terms of the front facade, I think I accept the conclusion of the need for the removal of the brick. I think that, or for the covering of the brick, and I think that limestone is an appropriate choice. It's a bit unusual to have a federal building in limestone. They are usually brick, but I guess one could scrounge up a couple of examples of them in limestone. And certainly, more broadly speaking, there were plenty of Georgian buildings in England and elsewhere that were limestone. I think that some of the changes were good. I think the removal of the window trim was successful. And my recollection of the conversation about the windows was that the windows got wider and they kind of looked like they were squeezing up against the edges of the building in a very uncomfortable and unusual way for a building of that type. By removing the trim, it does make it a little bit better, but I still think that they do look a little peculiar in that they're very, very unusually close to the edges of the building. I mean, if you look at the building right next door to it, for instance, you couldn't imagine putting a shutter on one of those windows because it would be flopping onto your neighbor's property. So the width of the top 3 floors does still seem I think the removal of the trim was a good idea, but I don't think it solved the problem of proximity of those windows to the side edge of the buildings. I think that the changes to the metalwork and stonework at the base were improvements, but I think the applicant should work with staff to look carefully at the detailing of that center entry portico, which looked to me off in terms of normally when there's like a little balconette that sits over a couple of columns or piers, there's an alignment between them. In this case, for some reason, it looked like in the elevation that they kind of hung over left and right. It looked a little. I think that the staff can certainly address that.
Thank you. Commissioner Jefferson?
So this building was built in 1888, altered in 1920. Cornice replaced with a lower, smaller cornice. Balcony added in 1960. This is a new building. And can you hear me now? Cannot hear me. Closer. You heard the first part of this? Or? No. Built in 1888, altered in 1920, and cornice replaced with a lower, smaller cornice. Balcony added in 1960. This is a new design. It's not a replication. For me, it's much improved. Base, the top, clear and simplified. The windows, I think, are fine. I think removing is around the window made it simpler. The cornice, I think, works very well. On a whole, I think the simplification of the facade works for me. I think the rear facade, it's fine. I can accept this.
Thank you. Commissioner Chu?
Yes, in general, I find this application appropriate. I agree with Michael that typically in these situations, we want to retain the top floor existing facade of the rear of the house. And so I think that's my only comment here, to retain the top floor. Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Kumbay?
Overall, I find the proposed facade restoration to be appropriate.
Thank you. Commissioner Wilder?
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Chu. I think I can find overall the application appropriate. However, with the rear facade, I think we should try to retain the top floor.
Thank you. Commissioner Ginsburg?
Well, as I noted, I wasn't here last time. I would tend to agree on the rear facade, but if we accepted it at the last meeting, I'm not going to go back with what we said. Besides that, I find it appropriate.
Thank you. Commissioner Mayen?
I concur with Commissioner Chu.
Thank you. And Commissioner Chen?
I'm same agreement here.
Commissioner Goldblum, do you feel comfortable reading it? I think they, with the top floor of the rear facade. Thank you.
Regarding 10 East 82nd Street, the Metropolitan Museum Historic District, the application is to alter the front facade, construct rooftop and rear yard additions, and excavate beneath the cellar and rear yard. I note the building's style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Metropolitan Museum Historic District. I further note that William Joseph Ryan purchased number 12 as his own residence in 1920, commissioning the facade alterations by architect Bradley Delahanty, and subsequently purchased number 10 as an investment property, commissioning Delahanty to redesign the facade in 1924 in a related but more economical manner than number 12. I finally note that the metal porch was added in the mid-20th century, and I recommend approval with modifications, finding that the brick and stucco at the primary facade is coated and in a deteriorated condition warranting significant repair or replacement. While the building was originally constructed as part of a row, this house and the majority of houses in the historic row have been extensively altered. Therefore, the proposed alterations will not detract from the unifying characteristics of an intact row. That the proposed work is in keeping with the early 20th century development of the historic district, which included redesign of existing buildings and production of new buildings in classically inspired styles, and that the proposed redesign, the federal style of the previous alteration, that the proposed limestone cladding will be in keeping with the cladding found at other buildings within the streetscape in terms of material, texture, and finish, that the installation of decorative details, including a rusticated base, simple dentelated cornice, and lintels with keystones, projecting sills and string courses will add a depth and articulation to the facade, that the proposed 6/1 double-hung wood windows at the upper stories and multi-light French doors at the parlor level will relate well to other buildings in the streetscape, further support the neo-federal style of the house, that the scale of the proposed enlarged window openings will harmonize with other buildings in the streetscape and not perceptibly change the solid to void ratio of the facade. The relocation of the main entrance to the center bay within a tall projecting door surround with a pair of solid wood doors surmounted by a Juliet balcony will be in keeping with the design of other entrances in the streetscape, and that this emphasis on the main entrance will fit within the traditional hierarchy of the new design. That the replacement of the areaway paving steps and ironwork, as well as the installation of planters, will be in keeping with areaway components and configurations found at other townhouses without stoops within the historic district. That the proposed rooftop and rear yard additions will not be visible from any public thoroughfare. That the proposed rear yard addition will not project farther into the green space than the adjacent addition and will not diminish the green space or compromise the historic character of the center of the block. That the coated rear facade is deteriorated and the original row has been compromised by other full-height rear additions. Therefore, the proposal of a significant rear yard addition will not eliminate significant historic fabric or alter the building's historic relationship to an intact row. That the design and materiality of the rear addition, including punched openings within a brick facade with cast stone trim, will maintain the scale and character of the building and as an individual townhouse, and will be in keeping with other houses on the block. That the proposed excavation will be done in compliance with TOB regulations under the supervision of a licensed professional engineer to protect the building's facades and adjacent buildings, and that the work will not detract from the special architectural or historic character of the building or the Metropolitan Museum Historic District. And the applicant I recommend, will work with staff to retain the top floor of the rear facade.
Thank you. Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that motion?
So second.
Thank you. And John, will you call the vote?
Vice Chair Master,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Ekwembe,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Mahan,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilder.
Aye.
Nine in favor, none opposed. The motion passes.
That's been approved with modifications. Please continue to work with staff. Thanks. Let's move to the next item.
We'll now move to our public hearing agenda items, starting with public hearing item number 1, LPC 25-10051, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Staten Island, Block 7465, Lot 115, 4500 Arthur Kill Road, the Kreischer House individual landmark. This is a stick-style residence designed by Palliser & Palliser and built in circa 1888. The application is to install a barrier-free access lift and construct an event structure and related landscape elements on the landmark site.
Good morning, Commissioners. Richard Lowry, Preservation Staff. I will be presenting the proposal, and the architect, Ron Victorio, is here to answer any questions, as is the owner, Eric Bischoff. Back at the Kreischer House, quite a few of you were not here the last time we looked at this. So just give a quick recap of the previous commission approvals. Was to construct 11 detached multi-story residential units around the Kreischer House. For a number of reasons, that was never started. There are 2 lots on the property. The area which houses the Kreischer House is shaded in gray, and there's a second lot which is not designated, which surrounds it, which is in white. You can tell the location of the Kreischer House in the middle of the along the western border of the gray shaded areas. It's sort of the pinnacle of the hill, and it slopes sharply down towards Arthur Kill Road to the north. The proposal is to erect a sort of seasonal event structure behind the Kreischer House. You can see in gray. On an elevated platform set about 50 feet from the rear facade of the Kreischer House. There's a paved area, you can see slightly in the sort of a pink tone between the two, utilizing salvaged Kreischer bricks, and a parking lot along the southern boundary you see here. It'll be accessed through a shared entrance for both lots at the southwest of Arthur Kill Road. And then just a quick comparison showing the previous approval with what we're coming to you today. Also, there's a fairly robust landscaping plan showing sort of a retention of the vast majority of the mature trees on the site. And some elevations showing Kreischer in comparison with the seasonal event structure. It's important to note that I guess the height of the clerestory on top of the event structure still sits below the eaves of the Kreischer House. Also important to note that there's a sort of a metal frame with sort of clear plastic sheathing as the components, and there's some renderings coming up. And then there'll be portable sort of bathroom blocks and HVAC as well on the as part of the proposal. Next component is just at Kreischer itself. They're looking to do a sort of an ADA barrier-free lift. Previously, one was approved by the commission at the side facade. They're simply asking to relocate this to the rear facade in between the area between the individual landmark and the proposed event structure. And some renderings of similar structures that just to give you a sense of the what it will look like. And just to give you a sense of the sort of the current sort of proposal of showing where this would sit behind the Kreischer and sort of the various viewpoints. Again, back and at the top portion behind the Kreischer House, with the sloping areas down towards Arthur Hill Road completely sort of free of any potential element. And finally, just some renderings of the proposal. To give you a sense of sort of scale and detailing. And thank you, commissioners, and I'll leave it to Ron to come up to give you a couple of details about sort of the wider community engagement plan that they're proposing for this and the use of the event structure. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners, Honorable Chair. With great pleasure, I am here to present this seasonal event structure.
Ron, could you state your name for the record, please?
Sure. Ronald Victorio. Thank you, John. So this will be the second time that this landmark structure will be receiving a cosmetic repair of the paint on the house. There's no modifications except for the relocation of the handicap lift, which was accessed the front porch. We're now relocating that to the rear. It services both the transition between smaller events and cocktail parties that would be held within the mansion, and then a transitional area, which is that brick patio with the intermingling of Kreischer brick, and then towards the seasonal event center. So the landmark structure, which was one of the most important things to previous presentations to the commissioners, is that this house prominently sits on a fairly significant knoll on the hill. There are no permanent improvements to obstruct any street views from Arthur Kill Road under this proposal. Major portion of the street frontage is a non-landmark site, but on the northerly side, there is a significant amount of street frontage, and the visibility of this seasonal structure in the seasonal areas, first of all, during the foliage time of the seasons, will be completely obscured, and in the fall will be reflected in the mill plastic surround around the aluminum structure. And in the fall, in photographs, you will see that it's and additionally also obscured. The front view on the top, we have a legend indicating the event structure at the rear, and you will see that there would be no visibility or limited visibility from Arthur Kill Road Street View. So the event center was located directly behind the mansion and probably the most prominent viewing of the Kreischer House. The rear view and side view. Again, it was mentioned that this is in the South Richmond of Staten Island. We will be doing limited modification of topography, only the removal of the trees that are located within the seasonal structure. We will be constructing a platform or a deck to place this structure on. We have discussed this project with the Department of Buildings. An application with DOB will be filed for the construction of the platform or deck to support the event structure. The event structure and a permit will be filed with DOB TPA unit for a temporary place of assembly. That will be granted on a 90-day basis, and my understanding is that we will need to represent this project to LPC on a yearly basis. No, done? Thank you for the correction. We won't be presenting to LPC on a yearly basis. John's nodding his head also. We do have a handicap ramp in that, to the event structure, in that there is a little transition area where this is raised approximately 2 feet above the highest adjoining grade. The event structure is fabricated out of an aluminum structure with mill sheet plastic. It is considered a temporary structure by DOB. Should, in the event of weather conditions, that plastic mill can be removed, but the aluminum structure would remain. It is a prefabricated unit. So there is no changing of the physical structural elements proposed under this application. The bottom of the exposed portion of the platform will utilize the similar lattice work and painting color that's on the front porches of the Kreischer House. And because we're raised on the northerly edge of the building, our temporary HVAC units will be located underneath, and any introduction of heating, cooling, and return air will be done underneath the raised platform. You will not see any of that on the exposure facades on any of the 4 sides. This indicates the rear of the building. We will be removing a small portion of the railing system and showing the the handicap lift adjoining a set of stairs that currently exist. There's a floor plan indicating the turnarounds and ADA clear accessibility. There's a view here of the portable toilet system that will be utilized. The property currently right now does not have a sanitary sewer connected to the residence. So it was important for us to show this temporary facility, which will also have handicap accessibility from within the structure. That is going to be placed on the rear of the building. We have a detail of the refuse area and the trellis portion of a social area prior to entering the enclosed event center. These are the wire frames taken from street views on Arthur Kill Road, superimposed on the trees and foliage, so that you can see even in the wintertime with the defoliation of the trees, the structure is going to be well obscured. Street view number 4, you will not see the structure at all. Renderings showing the utilization of the front of the house, small events, large events. The event center is going to look to accommodate approximately 125 people. Parking will be done completely on site. The parking requirements in this zone are only 25 cars. We have been providing 36 cars with handicap accessibility. And like any other event center, there will be attendant parking utilized in the drive-through and on the remaining portion of the lot if necessary for large events. The client intends to utilize this building both for community functions, historical tours for schools, meetings for our youth and school attending children. He's also collaborated with the College of Staten Island to have historical events and presentations, a tour of the Kreischer House, and then any presentations and follow-ups in the event center. An overall aerial view. The side walls will have clear panels of plastic, and the roof will have a translucent panel. That's the raised trellis area, which will act as a transitional area for people who may gather in the Kreischer House, go through the transitional brick patio area, and then on to the trellis area, and eventually enter within the event center. This is the rear portion to show that mix and mingling area on the patio. Also shows the handicap lift, which will be painted the green of the structure as to not stand out, but allows access into the house. A transitional area from a cocktail hour that may take place either within the house or on the exterior porch during seasonal times, and then transition across the brick patio into the event center.
Thank
Any
you.
questions?
Thank you, Ron. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Commissioner
Very
Chen?
quickly, seasonal, how seasonal and how temporary?
Well, again, we will be filing with the TPA unit. We are hoping that this would be a continual utilization of the event center. Not that temporary becomes permanent, because it's not technically a permanent structure. It's an aluminum frame. There is plastic here. But the TPA unit will, I have to go back to the TPA unit every 90 days and ask for a reinstatement of the occupancy of the structure.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Is there anybody in the room who would like to speak on this item? Noting that there isn't, let's turn it over to Elizabeth Lee to see if we have any remote testimony.
Those joining via Zoom who wish to speak, please use the raise hand function. You'll be promoted to panelist, after which we ask you to unmute, state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. The first speaker will be Christina Conroy.
Good afternoon, almost, Commissioners. I'm Christina Conroy for the Victorian Society, New York. Now, we would normally take a dim view of a proposal for such a large new structure adjacent to the magnificent Victorian-style Kirsch House. However, we are painfully aware of the difficulty of finding a successful reuse project for this historic house, a situation unfortunately all too common on Staten Island. We therefore offer our support for the proposal. We hope that it moves forward quickly so that the house can receive the restoration, maintenance, and activity that it needs. Perhaps the site's current status as a haunted house will be replaced among visitors by the appreciation of its architectural beauty and historical significance, at least one can hope. We note that the previous certificate of appropriateness issued for the site approved a series of apartment blocks that would be incompatible with the current application. The earlier permit expires in May, but it could be renewed. Would it be possible for the portions of both the proposals to be built without any review of the combined appropriateness? This would not be good. The Commission should make certain that this situation cannot arise. Thank you, Commissioners.
Anyone else who wishes to speak, please use the raise hand function. Seeing none, I'll note for the record that Councilmember Camilla Hanks and Staten Island Community Ward 3 recommends approval.
Thank you. Commissioners, any final questions? Okay, let's go ahead and close the hearing. Commissioner Jefferson, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Chu, would you second that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed. Since this is my borough, I will go ahead and start the discussion. So I am very familiar with the Kreischer Mansion. It's been, I don't want to say abandoned, but it hasn't been in use for several decades. I remember in the 90s, it was a restaurant that I went to, and even then it wasn't in great condition. And as the Victorian Society has noted, it has been used during Halloween as a haunted house. So this is a very exciting project that the new owners are coming in and restoring, renovating this beautiful house, and having this great adaptive reuse concept is very important for this individual landmark that all Staten Islanders are really aware of. The setting is, Ron Victoria had said, it's rural. Arthur Kill Road is a very small, narrow road. The setting, there's a lot of trees. It's an industrial area, lots of warehouse type use here. And it's set back significantly from the street. The event space is temporary and reversible, and I don't think it competes with the mansion. It's set back, and I think in terms of height, it's lower. So I don't find that it's intrusive or detracts from the mansion. I can also find, I think the lift appropriate and necessary. I can find the temporary ramp not intrusive and something that we do all the time. The portable bathrooms also are not intrusive and minimally visible from the street. And I think overall, I think this is a great adaptive reuse project. And I just want to also note that I do have a listing across the street, a restaurant space that I'm leasing. So I have seen some of the progress that they've made, and I've seen that they've been painting this house and that it looks fantastic. It looks much better than it looked before. And so I think it's just overall a very exciting project that I'm happy to support. Commissioner Ginsburg?
Having heard from the expert, that sounds reasonable and I can find this appropriate.
Thank you. Commissioner Mayen?
I agree.
Thank you. Commissioner Chen?
Same here.
Commissioner Jefferson?
Great community asset, and I think the scale and distance is perfect. Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Chu?
Appropriate.
And Commissioner Kumbay?
Appropriate as well.
Thank you. So let me go ahead and read the motion. Hold on. In the matter of LPC 25-10051, 4500 Arthur Kill Road, Kreischer House Individual Landmark. A stick-style residence designed by Palliser and Palliser, built in 1888. The application is to install a barrier-free access lift and construct an event structure and related landscape elements on the landmark site. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed work will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural or historic features of the building or site. That the construction of a seasonal event structure consisting of a metal-framed, plastic-sheathed greenhouse-like installation on a permanent metal-framed platform with lattice skirting and a dark finish will facilitate the adaptive reuse of the landmark building and site as an events venue. That the placement of the new structure 50 feet from the rear of the house will have limited visual and spatial impact on the landmark building and will take advantage of the site's topography and wooded areas to maintain a wide, open expanse around the front and sides of the building. That the new patio connecting the house to the event structure will feature salvaged Kreischer bricks, an evocative link to the Kreischer family and the nearby Kreischer brick manufacturer. That the proposed HVAC equipment and lavatories associated with the use of the event structure, which will be placed below and to the rear of the event structure respectively, are portable and will not be permanently situated at the site. That the proposed parking areas and access roads have been situated away from the landmark building along the edge of the site, and that the barrier-free lift and service ramp at the rear of the house will be located at a secondary facade, will be painted to harmonize with the color scheme of the house, and will not obscure any significant architectural features of the building. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you second that motion?
Yep, second.
Thank you. And John, will you call the vote?
Vice Chair Master,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu, Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Quimby,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Mayen,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilder. Not present. 7 in favor, none opposed. The motion passes.
Thank you. That's been approved. Thanks, Ron. Let's move to the next item.
Right, next item is public hearing item number 2, LPC 26-06522, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 1118, Lot 52. 56 West 66th Street, the First Battery Armory individual landmark. This is an armory building designed by Horgan and Slattery and built in 1900 to 1903. And the application is to install signage and alter entrance infill.
Hi, my name is Carrie Nolan from Buyer Blinder Bell. We are proud to be working with the Hebrew Union College to renovate the First Battery Armory into their new New York City campus. Architecturally, the project is primarily interior. We have received a certificate of no effect for the interior work. And we currently have, there are some masonry repairs that we submitted for staff review. But today, I'm joined here with Lily Feinberg from LVCK to present the exterior signage package so that Hebrew Union College can have their identity on the outside of the building. So I'm going to hand it over to Lily.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lily Feinberg. I'm a senior designer with LVCK. We're a Buyer Blinder Bell studio. And as Carrie mentioned, we're developing exterior signage to respond to and respect the architectural and historic character of this building while extending the Hebrew Union College, or I might call them HUC, identity out into the streetscape to guide people to the entrance and announce their presence in this building. Okay, so here you're seeing an overview of pretty much the entire sign family. Our signs are focused exclusively at the entry to the building. We don't have extraneous signs proliferating on the facade. This is a memorable and unique building, so our goal really is to identify this entry. The strategy behind the program here is driven by the site conditions. First of all, this block of 66th Street is very narrow. It's kind of like a canyon. There's a lot of traffic and loading and unloading going on in the street. So we want to be able to draw people to this building at the center of the block from the ends of the block and have some assurance that they're in the right place. The other aspect is that there are multiple doorways of this building. We're seeing here the center door, the main entry, but then on the east and the west ends of the building are two other very large doors, but those are for egress only. So we want to clarify for people where that entry is. And again, once they get here, make sure they know they're in the right place. Our material palette is informed by the building architecture. We're using primarily a darkened bronze and really treating the branding more like architecture than branding in especially all the permanent signage. The loudest sign you'll see here is the flag that we're proposing over the doorway. This is where we're using brand colors and the logo, but this is also the least permanent sign application of this family. So of all the signs you're seeing here, this flag could be changed over time, it could be maintained, and everything else is really taking a more subdued and austere approach to the signage. I'll also note that at the bottom of the screen here, these signs we've already reviewed and had approval at the staff level, but we're showing them here as part of the comprehensive sign family. And what we'll be reviewing and seeking approval on today are the laser cut grill over the transom, donor recognition over the door, the flag at the entry, and the building IDs that would flank that entry door. We have some precedent for a couple of these sign types. The first is the flagpole, where flagpoles and armories really go hand in hand. Pageantry is part of the lexicon of this type of building. We're showing here some examples of landmark buildings that use flags to identify entries and also the organizations inside of the buildings. And we also have a historic photo, actually the LPC designation photo of our building with a flagpole right over that center entrance. We also have some precedent for the grill work. A great example is the Central Savings Bank building just up the street from our building. This is showing decorative ironwork at the entry gates and above the gate, above the entry and the windows just above sidewalk level. It also has bronze identity signs flanking the entry to the residential part of the building, so that's a nice parallel too. And a few more present day buildings where we can see this idea of decorative grill work above the entry door to some buildings of the same era. All right, so for this flag, we really first need to talk about circulation. As I mentioned, this block is narrow, it's busy, there's a lot of visual clutter. And when we think about the block of 66th Street here, where on the east end of the block is Central Park, the view as you approach the building from that is in the center here. And then approaching from the west side is actually coming from the 66th Street subway stop. That's where we anticipate the large majority of pedestrian traffic coming from that subway stop. And you can see in this photo, there is a lot going on, most notably this parking sign protruding way far out, even past the facade of our building. So we really want to be able to give people a beacon, a signifier that their destination is here in the middle of the block. And this flag really helps us get some visibility, especially for those people who from the corner of 66th and Columbus or Broadway might be trying to affirm their route here. This flag is mounted lower than what you saw in the historic, the LPC designation photo. That flag had been mounted just above on the second level here. We had studied a flag in that position, and the difficulty there is now the parking sign. If we were to put a flag at that height, it would need to be much bigger and also protrude further out into the streetscape. So what we're proposing here is a slightly lower mounting position of the flag where the identity can be read from a pedestrian sightline below the parking sign rather than trying to reach around it and overtake it. All right, we also have this patterned grille at the transom window. This is a way that we're achieving brand presence at the arrival without putting another logo over the door here. We already have a flag. We'll have these bronze entry signs flanking on either side. So this is a way to actually keep the identity more abstract and more architectural. This would be a laser cut bronze metal grille. So it would be low contrast with the glass behind it. And the main way this pattern would come through is either inside the building with light coming in and casting the pattern as a beautiful shadow, or at nighttime having a subtle glow from the inside of the building to bring this pattern to life. There's also the potential for a large donation to support the construction going on at this building. Placeholder Hall is not our big donor, but in the event of a large donation, these letters we're proposing would be maximum 5 inches and 3/4 and in a light bronze material to contrast with the background. I should also note here that both of these would affix to the framing of the door and window, so not the historic stone. This is not a historic doorway structure, so we would be very careful about our attachments to maintain connections just at that window framing structure. All right, and then we have the building IDs, which are a pedestrian level affirmation of your arrival. These would be flanking that entry doorway. And you'll notice here that there's no logo on this either. There's a real interest in an austere kind of subdued sensibility to this signage. And we're also aware that branding changes, logos change. Hebrew Union College intends to be in this building for a long time. So by using a typographic sign here, we want to make this as evergreen as possible. And I should note here too that for this sign and all of our signs, our attachments would be as minimal as possible. Our preference would be to install, to pin mount into mortar seams wherever they are thick enough to mount into without damaging the edges of the stones. We know there's a few instances where the mortar seams get very thin. So in those cases, we would pin mount into the stone as far away from the mortar seams as possible. Excuse me. but we would make as minimal of a penetration as we can. And also this stone has a variation in its color and texture that makes it very forgiving towards reversibility. Any patching and repairing would basically be imperceptible given the texture of the material. So here we have an overview of our arrival signage. You're also seeing here the address ID, which we would place above the west building ID sign. This was for the fire department use. It's part of those signs that have been approved at SAF level, but you can see the cumulative effect here. And I'll just take you through those other signs very quickly. It's all about confirming your arrival, a small vinyl sign at the door, as well as an ADA directional pointing you to the accessible ramp just next door to the entry. So here we have a small arrival sign and directional for the ramp. And finally, there will be a mezuzah. This is a Jewish ritual object that's placed at doorways. The design of the actual mezuzah is TBD, but it won't exceed this 9" by 1.5" dimension. But this is one place where we already know that mortar seam is very thin. So we would be stud mounting into the stone with as minimal penetration and as far away from that mortar joint as possible for a easily reversible solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Okay, let's see if there's anybody in this room that would like to speak on this item. Noting that there isn't, let me turn it over to Elizabeth Lee to see if we have any remote testimony.
Those joining via Zoom who wish to speak, please use the raise hand function. You'll be promoted to panelist, after which we ask you to unmute, state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. The first speaker will be Megan Fitzpatrick.
Hello, Commissioners. Megan Fitzpatrick speaking on behalf of Landmark West. Our Certificate of Appropriateness Committee commends the proposed reuse of this building and welcomes Hebrew Union College to the neighborhood. The overall signage package is discreet and refined with an academic character that is well suited to the building's new adaptive use. We particularly admire the proposed which is thoughtful and well integrated into the facade. However, we do have some concerns. We do have some concerns about the proposed flag element. Its pronounced 45-degree angle introduces a harsher visual note than the rest of the signage scheme, and we believe this aspect could be revised to better align with the otherwise restrained and elegant approach. Thank you.
The next speaker will be Christina Conroy.
Okay, am I on? I don't see myself. Okay, am I on? Can you hear me, see me? Hello?
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. You can't see me. Okay, no problem. Oh, there I am. Okay. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Christina Conroy for the Victorian Society, New York. Now, the Victorian Society is happy to support the changes proposed for this individual landmark. There is ample precedent for the installation of flagpoles centered over the entrances to armories. The photo from 1966 shows that this building once supported an American flag, albeit in a slightly higher location. There is also a long tradition of iron grillwork installed at transoms and ground floor windows at buildings of this age and type. And the proposed signage, some mandated by the ADA, is well scaled both in size and amount for this facade. However, we would have liked to see an installation detail for the flagpole, which the applicant is proposing to secure to finely detailed stonework above the central entrance. It's important to document the installation details to be certain that damage to the stone is kept to a minimum in case the flagpole is ever removed. Thank you, Commissioners.
Anyone else who wishes to speak, please use the raise hand function. Seeing none, I'll note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 7 recommends approval.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to respond to any of the comments?
Sure, I'm happy to speak to the concern about the flag. I think our intention in designing let's see if I can go back to this page now. Designing an angled flag is actually to give the most presence of the flag where it will have the most impact, which is below the parking sign. At the higher level, we had studied a rectangular flag that hangs down perpendicular to the building, or sorry, parallel to the building. And what that did was in order to have the sign message low enough to read below the parking sign, it left just a lot of blank space for the flag. It was almost like flag space for the sake of more pattern. So we felt that this design was more economical and more efficient with the message that we need to get across. And as far as the flag mounting detail, of course, that is something that we would take a much closer look at to ensure that the attachment maintains the integrity of the stone behind it and would be reversible should the flagpole ever be removed.
Thank you. Commissioners, any final questions? Okay, let's go ahead and close the hearing. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Commissioner Mahan, would you second that?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed. Let's go ahead and start our discussion. Commissioner Chu, would you like to start this discussion?
Sure. Yeah, I think this is a great adaptive reuse project. The proposed signage elements that were presented, I find are minimal and necessary. I don't have any issue with them. I do also have concern about the flagpole, and that's about the anchoring. Typically, because of the scale of the flagpole, it structurally needs a lot of attachments to the facade. I just worry about that detail because they usually end up having 3 or more anchors in order to get the force it needs off of that point attachment. And it's at a part of the facade that I find is very critical, which is the keystone right at the top. So I do think I would personally prefer to see this on the balcony above, where the attachment can be minimal. I actually think that in terms of scale, if I look at the overall elevation, the building is not insignificant in height. And the flagpole location feels to me more suited at the break between the stone base and the brick top. I worry that this is going to mar the facade of this in the historic stonework. And it does feel too tight to me in terms of location.
Thank you. Commissioner Ikumbe?
Overall, I find the signage package to be appropriate, very minimal. Also, I find the tracework for over the transom to be quite pleasant and natural, and it fits very nicely. Everything else is pretty minimal, and I agree with what's being presented. As Commissioner Chu was stating, the flagpole, I think a hint should be taken from the historical picture, where it is actually placed higher above the stone. There may be anchoring errors of that case already there, so that should be investigated.
Thank you. Commissioner Walder?
Yes, I agree. I like the signage. I like the grill above the doorway. I do also agree that I think there's going to be problems with trying to anchor that flagpole right above the door at the stone. So I think it should be raised higher and possibly in the same location where it was in an historical photo.
Thank you. Commissioner Ginsburg?
I understand that you were trying to allow for visibility of this flag with the parking sign, which may not be there forever, but I tend to agree with my fellow commissioners that there are better locations for it for the historic building. Besides that, I find everything appropriate.
Thank you. Commissioner Mahan?
I concur with everyone else. Also just lovely work and nice job presenting it.
Thank you. Commissioner Chen? Commissioner Goldblum? Commissioner Jefferson? Okay. Commissioner Chu, would you like to read the motion? Maybe suggest that they work with staff to find a better location for the flagpole
Yes, okay, sure.
anchoring.
In the case of LPC 2606522, 56 West 66th Street, First Battery Armory, an individual landmark, an armory building designed by Horgan and Slattery and built in 1900 to 1903. The application is to install signage and alter entrance infill. I recommend approval with modification, finding that the proposed work will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural features, that the presence of a flagpole on an armory building is characteristic of this building typology, and this building has had a flagpole in the past located in the area of the facade above the balcony. That the size of the proposed flagpole is in keeping with the scale of the entrance, that this entrance and infill at the main entry is modern, and therefore the installation of grille work at the Hanson will not obscure any historic features, that the historic grille work is a typical feature that main entrances at monumental buildings and armories in particular, and the dark bronze finish of the grille work will match the finish of the adjacent infill, that the light bronze lettering affixed to the transom bar will be small in scale and simple in design, that the proposed plaque signs will be anchored through the mortar joints and will be well scaled to the entrance, that the proposed work will not diminish the special historic and architectural character of this individual landmark. I ask that the applicant work with staff on relocating the proposed location of the banner, specifically to avoid damage of the historic facade and stonework.
Thank you. Commissioner Kumbe, would you second that motion?
Second.
Thank you. And John, will you call the vote?
Vice Chair Master,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum, Commissioner Quimby,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Mahan,
Aye.
and Commissioner Wilder.
Aye.
9 in favor, none opposed. The motion passes.
That's been approved with modifications. Please work with staff. Lunchtime? Okay, great. Now, it's actually time for lunch. It is 12:30 now. So we're going to return at 1 o'clock and resume the afternoon session. We're going to ask all members of the public on Zoom to voluntarily exit at this time so that you don't experience technical difficulties returning to the afternoon session, which can arise if we have to remove you from the meeting.